Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here this morning, so bright and early. We all just saw the sunrise. And I'm just so happy to see such a full house in here. Oh my goodness, there are a lot of people in this room. So this is amazing. And Carol from Davis Benefits and Pensions kept contacting me every day. She's like, Sophia, we have 5 more. Okay, we have 6 more registrants. So clearly this is a hot topic and one that I'm not alone in thinking that this is an important one, so I'm in good company with all of you today. I do want to thank the Davis Benefits and Pensions team for having me here and also for organizing events like this. Is it quarterly that this takes place, these events?
Twice a year.
Twice a year.
Yeah.
So this is amazing. It's an awesome opportunity for all of us, I think, as employers, employees, small businesses to learn from one another and really start applying some of these best practices in our workplaces. So I remember the last time I was here, I was thinking back to when it was, and I think it was 2012, and I was sitting at one of the tables back there, and the topic was social media and privacy in the workplace. And the first thing I did when I went back to my workplace was open up our employee handbook, flip right to the social media policy, and made a lot of revamps. That's what I did to make sure we were compliant. So that's my hope for all of us today, is that you're able to walk out of the session today and start applying some of these new learnings and aha moments and some tangible resources for you to be able to apply in your workplaces. So as I was putting this presentation together, it's always interesting. When I put a presentation together, I'm always interested to know who's out there in the audience. And so, of course, I tailor it accordingly. But this one here, as I was putting it together, I realized that this one hits closer to home than a lot of other topics that I talk about. And that's not to say that those topics are not important. Of course they are. Anything that's people related, it's up my alley. I'm in HR. So, of course, it's going to be something that I'm interested in. But succession planning is something that I've experienced firsthand. And so I know the impact it had on me then, the impact it has on me today, and the impact that it had on the firm. And so I thought I would share that story with you first, so we can start to understand the benefits for all stakeholders involved. So it was a time in my career where I was transitioning from the education field. I was in the education field for about 10 years. And I was transitioning into more of the corporate arena. So a very different ball game for me, a very foreign industry for me. And I accepted a role as an executive assistant in a public practice accounting firm. So I was supporting a few partners there. And it was about 5-6 months into my role, and one of the partners called me into his office. And so I went into his office. And I remember that meeting like it was yesterday, sat across from him. And he said, Sophia, it's been great having you here. You fit right in. You've learned really quickly. You've gone above and beyond in terms of supporting our partners. But, and I don't know about you, but whenever I hear like but or however in a sentence, especially if it starts off really well, I'm like, oh God, what's this going to be? But he continued and he said, but we think you're going to be bored in this role pretty quickly. And so us partners were talking, and we just see HR. We see you in HR. We think that'll be a great fit. And so I'm not sure if you know, but our HR manager is planning on retiring within the next 3 to 5 years, and we'd love to help groom you for that position and transition you into that role. So think about it and let us know, but we'd like to support you in that role. And so I remember walking out of his office, and for me, I felt incredibly respected and appreciated and valued and invested in. And of course, these are the feelings that I think we want all of our employees to feel, you know? And so for me, it was a no-brainer. It was a really quick yes. I think I said yes that exact day. And I said, yes, I would love to be, in HR. It's something I've done actually in my past roles. So I would love to do that. And so what the firm did was they supported me in terms of succession planning by, I went back to school and I got my post back in HR. I got my CPHR designation, and then they supported me with job shadowing as well. So they would take me out of my EA role, and then I would go into HR a couple of times a week to sort of, really learn the ins and outs of what the HR team did within that firm. And so it was a seamless transition. Within 3 years, I was able to transition into that role. and they set me up for success. And so for me, the impact was I was able to grow and learn and develop my skill set. I was able to enter an industry and a profession that I'm still passionate about today. I was able to advance in my career at a much faster pace had I not been given that opportunity as well. And the impact that it had on the firm was, quite frankly, it was a really good retention strategy too. Like thinking back, I stayed with that firm for close to 6 years. And at that time in my career, that's typically when there's a lot of movement that takes place as well. I had job offers, and some of the compensation was better, but my answer was always no. And the reason it was no was because I wasn't about to turn my back on a company that invested in me, that allowed me to spread my wings and fly, that gave me this amazing opportunity. I was invested in them, I was dedicated to them, I wanted to see them succeed, and I wanted to be a part of that success story. And so I wanted to highlight that story because as I talk to different firms, so these are different kind of industries that I've worked in right now as an HR consultant and in industry. I can tell you that the number one thing that clients say to me is, Sofia, it is really hard to attract talent, but it's even harder to keep them in the doors. So retention is tough. It's a competitive market. And so succession planning comes up as this is one facet or one area in HR in our businesses where we can start to retain some of our top talent within our companies. And so my objective in presentations like this is I want companies to start thinking, acting, and operating in a people-first culture. And so whatever that may be, but people-first culture meaning let's start focusing on the people side of the business because that will absolutely help our businesses thrive. And so succession planning is one way that we can do that because succession planning is all about skill development. It's about looking at who do we have in our doors and how do we help them grow and learn and advance in their career, whether it's advancement laterally in different positions at a lateral level or advancing upwards as well. So here is what we have in the room today. These are the different industries represented in this room today. I took a look at all the companies that all of you work at, and here's what we have. And I thought this was just amazing to see such a diverse spectrum here of different industries represented in this room alone this morning. Pretty incredible. We've got small businesses, medium size, large size, all over the map in terms of industries. And you're all here today to learn about succession planning, meaning it transcends all industries. This topic is a hot topic all around for different industries, regardless of size. So over the next hour, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to break it up into 3 sections. So the first one is I'm going to walk you through what is succession planning. So I often get asked, well, what's the difference between really replacing a position versus succession planning? Like, what's the difference on those two? So we'll define that. Next, we're going to go over the why. So why is it so important for us to start embedding succession planning in what we do and start putting it on our priority lists within our company? So why bother? And the last piece, I'm excited about this. You've got a bit of a handout in front of you. So we're going to go through the how. So granted, it's an hour. I could probably do succession planning and present out for a full day on succession planning, but I wanted to give you something that was a tangible resource that you can walk out of this room and start applying. So we will go through how do we build that talent pipeline, how do we discover who's next in line, and so that's what it's about today. Succession planning, building our bench strength, and determining who some of these next successors are for some of our key positions. Sound good? Ready to go? All right, so let's start with succession planning defined. So how do we define succession? So here's a definition for us. Okay, so I'm going to read it out loud verbatim here. A conscious decision by an organization to foster and promote the continual development of employees and ensure that key positions maintain some measure of stability. Some key words up there, highlighted in pink. Important words. But what you'll notice up here is I have not mentioned leadership anywhere up here. There's no mention of the level of the position. You have the sunshine right in your face. I'm going to block that sunshine for you so you can see. Okay, I'm going to try to stand here as much as possible for you. You'll notice I have not mentioned leadership up here, and there's a reason I didn't mention it up here. Oftentimes when we talk about succession planning, we often talk about critical roles, and in our heads, critical roles are really then leadership level, is how we look at it. I mean, I can't tell you how many conferences and workshops and articles I've read on succession planning, and typically it's around successors for leaders and leadership, VPs, presidents, managers, etc., executives, etc. But my take on it is we actually need to start looking at succession planning across the board, across all of our different positions in our organization. Because a lot of positions across the board, regardless of level, are critical roles. And so I'm going to give you an example of that. I was working with a law firm, and this law firm had an office manager that worked for them. And she was there for 18 years. And to put it really simply, she was a rock star. I mean, she was really good at what she did. She knew the ins and outs of that business. She knew all of the practice areas. She managed the associates and partners' calendars beautifully. She would pick up the phone and she would recognize a client's voice. And so she knew who the clients were. I mean, talk about client service right there, right? She was incredible at what she did. And 18 years she was there, 18 years. One day she comes in, she talks to the managing partner, and she says, okay, as you know, I've got 2 grandbabies. My daughter's going back to work full time, and I want to take care of my grandkids. And so I'm going to retire early. So complete shock for the law firm, because they weren't thinking proactively. I mean, I think maybe they thought she'd be there forever. She was there for 18 years, right? But I can tell you, when she walked out of those doors, everything left with her. I mean, it was all up here, right? And it was no longer a well-oiled machine. I mean, she did a lot behind the scenes that made it seamless for everyone there. And so that was a wake-up call for me, going, well, you know what? With succession planning, let's start asking ourselves, like, if that person leaves tomorrow, will it be hard for us to replace that position? And if the answer is yes, then we need to start thinking about how do we start building people to, at least in the interim, fill these positions if we don't have someone that can permanently do that. Okay? So an easier definition of succession planning is all about this. How do we build our bench strength and pipeline of talent? So it's looking internally and looking at who do we have in-house and how do we develop them even further so they can move into different positions. Now, I do want to say that there are a couple of people in this room, I believe, who are recruiters in this room. And so I want to mention something to the recruiters in this room. Recruitment is tough. It's not easy to find the right talent for a lot of these positions, especially in such a competitive market too. When I talk about succession planning, I'm not suggesting that we need to never look at externally sourcing candidates. That's not going to happen. You're not always going to have the right talent in your companies to move into different positions. So you're going to have to source externally. And there's a benefit of sourcing externally, actually, which is you get diversity in terms of experience and ideas and things like that as well. So recruiters out there, you have a really important job. And so all of us as companies, the thought process here with succession planning is let's look in-house to see what we can do with the talent that we have. Okay? So oftentimes I get asked, okay, well, this office manager that I just talked about in terms of the law firm, what's the difference between replacing her position versus actually having a succession plan in place? Here's the main difference. I would say replacement is very reactive. An event took place. The office manager left. So our job then at that point is, okay, we got to fill that spot, right? Well, we didn't have a job description. Nobody knew the ins and outs of what she did. We were scrambling to be able to find, okay, well, how do we even post the position? Who would be the best candidate for this position? I have no idea. So we're starting from scratch. Very reactive. Succession planning, on the other hand, is very proactive. It's a dynamic type process. It takes time. It takes planning. It takes forethought. Because really what you're doing is you're saying, okay, we're going to have other people job shadow this office manager over time so that should something happen, we have at least backups. So we don't have a huge gap to fill, if we choose to go externally. And so replacement is all about firefighting, is the way I would look at it. It's firefighting. And succession planning is fire prevention, is how I would look at it. Okay. Replacement is also a form of risk management. The second she walked out of those doors, clients had no idea who to call. And they were probably used to that level of client service where they'd call and she'd be like, oh, hi Joe, how are you doing? Yes, this and this. Like, she knew who people were. So they were used to that type of client service. That was gone. Partners and associates were a little bit lost with the status of client files at the time, right? So didn't know where to find things as well. Where did she save all of these things? Which drive was it? I mean, there was a lot of scrambling that took place. So risk management for sure. Succession planning is all about planning future development. So it's not just looking at roles today, but it's looking at what will that role look like in 2 years down the road and 3 years down the road, et cetera. Because roles don't stay stagnant. As our companies grow, as industries change, we have to also start looking at our jobs and start ensuring that they evolve over time as well. And the last one is short-term versus long-term, right? So office manager leaves, short-term is we need to fill that spot now, like yesterday. So we better fill that spot as quickly as we can, right? So short-term. Whereas succession planning, just like the example I gave you this morning, it's long-term. For me, it was a 3-year process. Sometimes it could be longer depending on the position, sometimes shorter, but typically it's a longer process to be able to get there. Okay. Any questions on the replacement and succession? Okay. So if someone asks me, okay, well, if we're choosing successors, like really what's it all about? Here's what I would say. You need 3 factors. All 3 need to, there needs to be interplay here between all 3 of them. And here it is. The first thing you need to do is you need to start looking at what can the person do? So like current state. What can this potential successor do today? Okay, so this is really looking at essentially their track record. Like, what's their performance like? What are some of the successes that they've had in previous roles or today in their role? So you're looking at what can they do. So most companies get this right. They're looking at successors and basing it on current state, what their abilities are. But you need can, and you also need could. So future state, what could they do? So these are potential predictors. Does this person have potentially the knowledge, skills, abilities, competencies to be able to fulfill these requirements of this role down the road? Right? So we're looking here at fulfilling future requirements. Could they do it? And the third one I find that companies don't look at is, well, do they want it? You may think that a successor may be fantastic, and you may say, oh, they can do it, and they could absolutely fulfill all the requirements. They're going to be a superstar. But maybe the person doesn't want to change positions as well. And I've met a lot of, I like to call them steady eddies, and they're super valuable for companies, right? These are people who are subject matter experts who don't necessarily want to transition into a different role. So if people don't want it, probably shouldn't be considered a successor. So we need to start asking people, well, what is it that you would like in your career? Would you like advancement? Would you like different opportunities? I'm going to use my husband as an example. His ears are probably going to be burning at this point when I mention him. But my husband, after he graduated from BCIT, he started working in a lighting company. And he's still there today. So over 25 years later, he's at the same company, right? That's rare to be in the same company for so long. So he's a lifer there. Currently he's a customer service manager. And there are opportunities. There are higher up positions for him. And can he do it? Yes. Could he? Yes. Does he want to? No. And the reason he doesn't want to is because we have that balance in our family. It just works for us in terms of our family obligations, et cetera. So he then wouldn't be considered or pegged as a successor for some of these positions, and the company knows that. He's one of the steady eddies. He knows what he's doing, right? Subject matter expert's a go-to. So when we start getting to the how section, how do we start building succession plans? I want you to think about what can this person do, could they do, and do they want it? Think about these 3 different factors.